Some observers said that the sentiment is not very good this year.
Obviously, there are questions that have to be resolved in both countries.
You are going to come back to Beijing for the APEC meeting. What's your expectation for this meeting this year?
We've had ups and downs since, but one would have to say that we're far better off today than we were 20 years ago.
今天我们有请到嘉宾，美国商会主席 Thomas Donahue 先生。他从1997年即开始担任这个职位，在中美贸易和谈判方面有非常丰富的经验。究竟如何看待中美双边投资协定谈判的进展？让我们来听听他的观点。
中美贸易30多年来迅猛发展，在商品贸易和服务贸易之外，双边商贸投资成为近年来中美贸易发展的新方向。最新统计显示，在流入美国的外国直接投资中，只有不到1%来自中国；在流入中国的外国直接投资中，只有约3%来自美国。现状显然不令人满意。
And like you said, the strategic part is challenging, and some observers said that the sentiment is not very good this year. So do you think the results of the economic track has been negatively influenced by the other track?
Well, if there's a given amount of time to talk about any set of issues, and then some of that time is taken away to talk about something else, well, then you don't have as much time to move significantly on the matters of concern on the economic side. But there is a lot of very positive information. I mean, China is investing more in the United States this year than we're investing here. I mean, it'll go back and forth. China is buying a whole lot of U.S. companies, and we're very excited about that. And the U.S. is trying to invest here in a more significant way going forward. Obviously, there are questions that have to be resolved in both countries, but we feel very good about that. We came here with a very positive attitude. We're looking forward to the Track 2 dialogue. We know there's going to be some very, very helpful discussions on the BIT. Might even talk about a free trade agreement that we might negotiate over the next decade.
How do you see the progress on the cybersecurity issues, like protecting the trade secrets, as you said?
Well, I think there is an ongoing debate throughout the world, by the way, on the protection of intellectual property. There are some people that think as soon as it is invented that they have a right to it. Well, then nobody is going to spend money to make innovations in pharmaceuticals and in information technology and in biophysics and all this sort of thing. You have to protect, or by the way, in entertainment or in news. You have to protect your intellectual property, and we're very, very engaged in that, and we think that's important. And my argument is this: the United States is one of maybe 58 or 60 countries, including China, around the world that has an intelligence service. We're one of only 4 or 5 that will not use what we learn in our intelligence thing to the benefit of our private companies. We don't do it. Most people do, and so we're careful about that. The cybersecurity issues are more complicated than they have been in years past because technology is more effective in terms of learning what you want to learn. Our deal is we're not going to disadvantage competitive companies from around the world because of what we learn. And we are going to try, on a strategic sense, to learn what we have to learn to protect our interests and to protect the interests of our trading partners.
Does U.S. companies have this problem in other countries?
Yes.
Like?
Well, I'm not going to start naming countries. Look, if 60 countries are doing this, then of course you have a problem. I can tell you that we have problems on a whole series of issues, let's say in India. We have problems in our best trading partner on intellectual property, in that Canada. We have spoken about these issues on a regular basis. But because of the size of China, because of the scope of its technology, maybe we have a larger set of disagreements with them. But that's what you'd expect. And our reason to be here is to look for the positive things that are going on here in the protection of intellectual property. Our reason to be here is to look for new ways to expand investment, new ways to try and come to some of these trade agreements, for example, the intellectual property agreement. And we see this as a very positive time to be in China.
2008年以来，中美双方已经进行了12轮 BIT 谈判，也就是中美双边投资协定。按照今年第6轮中美战略与经济对话披露的信息 ，BIT 谈判已经进入文本的实质性谈判，并有望按照时间表依次推进。
And in this year's dialogue on the economic track, I think the most interesting thing is setting a timetable for a bit. So from your point of view, what are the biggest obstacles in the following negotiations? Because the Vice Finance Minister of China said he expects many difficulties.
Well, first of all, when you do a bit, you're creating an advantaged relationship with one another on financing. So you have to say which things are you going to exclude. Before you even get started, you ought to say what things are not going to get into this agreement. And those lists will probably be done in the next 6 months. And once we get those lists taken care of, we'll be moving very quickly to talk about how we'll deal with all the rest of the investment issues. My own view, my preference is we move very quickly on this because I think it's the forerunner to a free trade agreement. I think it makes extraordinary sense for us to advantage the both economies, and I think it is something that will build confidence between the U.S. and China. Unfortunately, there are a whole lot of issues that have to get resolved, and we've got to work together, the business community, to pressure our government to move quickly for all the reasons I mentioned, and we'll be doing that.
Do you think the resistance from Chinese state-owned enterprises is a big problem in the negotiation?
Do I think the resistance from some large U.S. companies would be a big problem? No, I think it is a part of the negotiation. Chinese state-owned companies want a bit. They want to be able to attract investment, and they want to be able to invest elsewhere in the United States on a favorable basis. So I think what you have here is people that have great intentions, and in the meanwhile they're trying to protect their established positions. And would you expect anything else from large multinational corporations and governments that have trade agreements and investments all over the world? Your own president is moving right now all through South and Latin America, visiting with people, making investments, and that's how the system goes. So it's not a matter that people say, oh, it's fine, just sign it. We don't do that. China doesn't do that. U.S. doesn't do that.
在多轮活动预热和传媒吹风之后，2014亚太经合组织领导人会议周活动将于11月5日至11日在北京举行。今年会议的主题为“共建面向未来的亚太伙伴关系”。根据已经披露的信息，由中国主导的多个亚太经济合作框架可能在本届 APEC 课上正式公布。
You said that you are going to come back to Beijing for the APEC meeting. What's your expectation for this meeting this year?
Well, we go to the APEC meeting every year, and we do it for 3 or 4 reasons. We do it so that we can see all the heads of state that we know in one place, and we don't have to go all those places. We do it because there are always a half a dozen high sensitive issues and opportunity issues that we want to talk with our business partners. You see, before the APEC meeting, there's a meeting of the leaders of the business organizations and the business community, and we do it because we want to have an influence long before the meeting.
You have assumed this position since 1997, so it's almost at the same time as China joined the WTO. So in the past over 25 years, how do you see the trade landscape evolved?
Well, I think there's one thing that everybody should remember. that the Chamber of Commerce of the United States and I personally was involved in making sure, when it was a difficult vote, that China was accepted into the WTO. I appreciate that Chinese leaders understand that and remember that, because we believe then, and we fundamentally believe now, that China must be an important part of the economic system of the world and must be a leader and a player in those countries that are trying to make it better for everybody. I was pleased that we did that. We've had ups and downs since, but one would have to say that we're far better off today than we were 20 years ago. And America is dealing with its own challenges in the global trading system. When economies are under stress, then people in the home country become protectionists. And what we have to do to remember is that markets have to open for economies to prosper. When markets are restricted and closed, economies can deal in their own indigenous environment, but the real prospering in this world is in trade. 95% of the people the United States companies will sell something to don't live in the United States.
在1997年担任美国商会主席后 ，Thomas Donahue 先生已经至少访问中国7次。他表示，他经常带着代表团来中国听取中国企业的意见，同时中国政府和企业的代表团也经常在美国华盛顿与他见面。他认为，虽然在战略方面是有挑战性的，但是在经济方面，今年是颇富成果。